So, welcome to another episode of the Life of Elvis podcast. I'm your host, Elvis, and today with me is Deedee Jebrail from California, right? I almost said San Diego, but from the...
Close.
Yeah, close enough. Okay, she's a dream interpreter, so that's what we're going to be mainly talking about. You mentioned that you do also paranormal investigation. So let's talk a little bit about that, and then we get into the nice dream stuff.
Sure.
So how did you get to that?
Okay, well, it's funny. Around 2015, I got into a group called Haunted Hour, and everybody was talking about the paranormal. And before that, I didn't really know people were that interested in it. So I ended up talking with people because I had prior experiences. When I was in my 20s, I lived in a house that had paranormal activity, and I always just kind of blew it off. I don't know what's going on, but I didn't, really discuss it. And we had other people who would come over and they were terrified of our house and would have really bad paranormal experiences. But for me, living there, I had minor experiences. So it wasn't anything where I had to leave. But other people were actually terrified. So
what was going on there, if I may ask? In the house?
Sure. Well, okay. The people who we were in our 20s, we had friends that would come over and spend the night and stuff, and they would have doorknobs turning to their rooms. They would see people walking through our living room. And it's funny because one night, one of our guests, he was literally hysterical because he was sure he had saw someone walking through the living room. And right before he started yelling, I had seen somebody walk through the living room as well, but I thought it was him. But now looking back, I realized, wait a minute, he had a different placement in the house. So I actually saw it too, but I didn't realize it wasn't someone alive, and we had a neighbor who said that there was a spirit who walked through our home every night, which we thought was really funny because we didn't believe in that, but come to be that maybe there really was somebody walking through the house. And it was just minor stuff. I used to write really weird, dark poetry and cry, and I don't even know where it came from. And just weird things would go on. We had another person who came over, and he was sitting on the couch, and he felt someone sit down next to him, hip to hip, shoulder to shoulder. And he got up and he left. That's how much it was overwhelming to him. So I don't know. I can't go back to that house, but I wish now I would have a totally different attitude about investigating and stuff. So you can never say that you don't believe in something, because the universe will come back to you and say, oh, we're going to talk about this now.
Yeah, that's true.
So as far as the paranormal goes, after I got involved with the group, I hooked up with some ghost hunting teams, and I've been on some ghost hunts. I've bought a haunted doll, which she's behind me, Anna Mae. Get a lot of weird activity when I do EVP sessions with her. I'm a co-host on a paranormal talk show. So I just kind of dabble in everything with the paranormal, but it's the dream interpretation that's really got my heart,
Mm-hmm. All right. So what was some of the most intriguing cases you studied in terms of the paranormal?
Well, I think the most interesting thing to me is that if you go to a haunted place, there will be a whole story about what ghost haunted and things like that. And then after doing some research, you find out that they're wrong about, someone may have not died in that location, or it's actually a different spirit that's probably most likely haunting the location. I've never had anything too crazy happen to me. I was at an abandoned hotel called Binion's in Las Vegas, and it's on Fremont Street, and it was an old gangster hotel. And so they had what was called the counting room. And while I was in there, I was standing in this spot, and I literally felt like I was sinking into the floor, but I wasn't moving. But I felt like I was being crushed, being lowered, like an elevator, like a simulation of an elevator, but being crushed. And I literally stumbled out of the space, and I stepped back into it because I felt fine when I was not in the space. When I went back into it, it happened again. So just little minor things like that. I've never had anything super crazy happen to me on a paranormal investigation. I've had things happen to me when I'm not on an investigation. Like we were watching TV one night and we had a clock fly off our wall. It was on a screw. And it's the kind of thing where you put it in and you push it down so that the top part is thinner than the circle that you got it in. And it flew off the wall like 6 feet. And I was just shocked and looking at it because that wasn't my first paranormal.
Off the wall.
Off up and off the wall, across the room, like at least 6 feet,
That's
probably
crazy.
more. And my husband jumped off of the couch and spun around and looked at me, and he's like, "Did you see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Because it wasn't my first paranormal experience. So it was just like overwhelming. We had a lot of activity when I first started getting into paranormal. Both my husband and myself he got poked on the shoulder. Our dog used to look like she had been kicked and would turn around and look to see who kicked her. We had cats where their butts would lift up in the air like someone was pushing their butt up in the air. Just weird stuff like that. Sometimes for a while I kept hearing the same spirit. We had done another podcast and it was also paranormal. And there was a spirit that came over the spirit box while we were doing a spirit box session. And I heard her that night later on in the living room, and she kept calling me, "Oh, caregiver." And I'm like sitting there laying in my bed going, I'm awake and I hear this and I don't hear voices, you know? And so it's funny when that happens, you tend to just like lay there because you're trying to process what's happening. But I heard her a couple of times and then that went away. So I don't know. I can't explain it. I don't know what I was hearing. It was definitely coming from my living room, not outside my house. And I am a caregiver. So it was weird that those were the choice of words that she used, you know? So I don't know.
Super interesting stuff. Right, so how did you get to dream interpretation then?
Dream interpretations, I'm someone who's always had dreams and remembered them, and they're always like over the top crazy. And so I started analyzing my own dreams for myself. And then I got really into handwriting analysts and dream analysts. And my mom and friends would ask me to analyze their dreams. And I did that for like 30 years. And it's only like it was last December, I had a couple of people ask me for dream interpretations. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to open this up to other people to interpret their dreams and help them see that my main goal is that people understand that anyone can interpret their own dream. You don't need a dream interpreter. This just kind of gets you in the mindset of how to interpret dreams, how to interpret your own dreams, and how important it really is. If you don't interpret your dreams, you're missing a whole side of yourself that will benefit your overall health. I mean, it could tell you anything from being ill to warning you about a bad relationship you're in. I mean, it's endless. You know, our subconscious is taking everything in all day long, things that we're not paying attention to. You know, we can't pay attention to everything. We'd go insane if we heard every word that was spoken and everything. But our subconscious takes it all in. And then if it's something that sticks out, it will bring it to you in a dream.
Yeah, the dreams are super important. So how do you approach interpreting the dreams?
What I do is the most important thing is to get as much detail about the dream as you can, but you can have something really small and get the gist of your dream. But what I'll do is I'll write out the dream, whether it's mine or somebody else's. I'll go ahead and rewrite it out, and then I'll pull out all the symbols and then write out all the symbols. And then I look up every symbol because I don't have everything memorized. So I look up each symbol. And I like to go to dreammoods.com. That's my favorite reference, and it's free. It's online. Anybody can use it. And I write out all the symbols that stand out, make sense to me. And then you got to look at it. Do all these symbols and the definitions you've written down, do they tell a story? And if they all go together, which usually they will, then you write it out as a story. And from that story, you can do your analysis and find out what is the meaning of this.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Right.
You take that all in.
Yeah, it's a lot of information, really.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I read a really interesting book in the past about dreams. It was called Tibetan Yoga of Sleep and Dream. I think I mentioned to you when we spoken last time. And over there, it's quite interesting that in Tibetan, in these teachings, they don't really put that much emphasis on the content of the dreams themselves. It's more about the process and the dream itself, not the content of it, like what's happening. That's not really as important there.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, what's an example of that?
Well, they try to make use of the dreams in different ways rather than it just being, you know, like it's not like an insight on what's going on in the psyche. It's more about the process itself and using it to eventually become enlightened. You know, to
Okay.
because they mention in
Spiritual. Yeah.
yeah, it's all about spirituality there. And because in this book, the author mentioned something really profound which stuck to me throughout the years. He said that, you know, we dream every night multiple times. You know, for our listeners, if you think you don't dream, you just don't remember it.
Right.
You know, you wake up during your non-REM phase and you just don't remember it simply. But we dream every night multiple times throughout our entire lives. And how many times are we actually aware of the fact that we are dreaming within that dream?
Right.
For the most part, most people barely ever,
Right.
maybe never for their entire lives.
Yeah.
So that being said, how do you know that in the moment of death you're gonna be conscious of the fact that you are dying? Because according to their beliefs, you die, there's a certain period where you are unconscious, then you come back to consciousness and you experience things. Even they call there are 4 different stages of bardos after you die, before you come into another life, if you do, that is. And basically, what their yoga of sleep and dream does is bring more consciousness into your dreams, into your into dreaming bodies. There's technically a way how to bring awareness even into the non-REM phase of the sleep, where you are technically unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So if you manage to bring consciousness into your dream state and the non-REM phase of your sleep, then the possibility of you being aware after you pass away becomes higher. And the reason is that, according to them, when you pass away, you go through different stages, and in one of the stages, I can't remember how it exactly goes, but you start seeing things and people and all sorts of things. But you need to recognize that it's all just projections of your own mind. If you are able to recognize that, it's not going to pull you towards things and you know, or whatever attachments you have. If you can let go of these attachments, you got a chance to going back to the source and becoming enlightened, and not going back into a cycle of death, rebirth, and life. So yeah, that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah, I love that.
Quite
I think I just read that. Yeah, I just read that because I was listening to your other podcast, and I looked that up, and I agree with that. I love that idea of how reincarnation works and how you know don't and it is always about becoming aware. Dreaming, whether you're becoming aware of yourself within yourself or hearing things from outside yourself. I mean, I think that the universe is always talking to us, but most of us don't listen. I had a time when I was driving in my car. I was awake. This isn't a dream. I was driving in my car. It was like 100 degrees. I had no air conditioning in the car, so I had my windows down. I'm driving on the freeway, nothing, you know, crazy going on. And I heard a voice say to me, "Roll up your window." And I was like, why am I thinking that? Like, why did that thought pop into my head? That's weird, you know? And so I didn't roll up my window. I just kept driving. And a couple of minutes goes by and I heard like the voice so intense roar at me, "Roll up your window," that I literally, without even thinking, started. It was an old 60s car. So I'm cranking up my window. And right as I'm finishing cranking up my window, a truck and car in front of me crashed, spun around, hit the wall, and my whole window that I just rolled up was just pelted with glass. All this glass. Jesus. And it literally saved me because I did listen. I didn't listen the first time, but I was given a second chance to listen. So, I mean, and that's being fully awake and being connected to source or universe that's telling you. But I mean, how many times do people not listen, and they're not here to tell us that they were in that car accident or whatever because they didn't listen, and they're not here. You know, so yeah,
that's a crazy part about being human, that we have the sources of information we just consciously, and if you're in this kind of state of consciousness, this alert problem solving state of consciousness, you can't access it.
Yeah.
It's because we are way too intellectual here in the West, but there's so much more to it. Thankfully,
that's why I like dream interpretation.
Yeah.
That's the only time that people let their guard down. People are open, and they can have crazy dreams. And like you said, people just don't remember their dreams. It's because they don't care to. They don't think it means anything. They think it's either, something that people talked about, before the 60s about psychiatry and all that, and they just don't care. But literally people, like there's people who are very successful and they get a lot of information in their dreams because maybe you can't come up with a concept or an idea. Even a lot of creative people use dreams and they come up with ideas for art, album, anything. So to not use that part of yourself or not try, you do miss the boat, and then you end up having to repeat cycles.
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of creatives, I even use some of my dreams in book that I published, Ascension. Some of them were like pretty interesting or wacky, so I end up just putting there. So why not? Might as well use them, right?
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to read that book.
Go for it. It's on Amazon, and you can find all the links on my website. Anyway, that was enough product placement for now. So what are some of the most common symbols you find in people's dreams?
I see a lot of people dream. The most common symbols I've run into are like apocalyptic or war type of symbols. Monsters. A lot of people like either it's a witch or a demon or a shadow, something like that. A lot of people seem to be in their kitchen when it's a dream of their house. Cars, water. I'd say probably the most common dream symbol is water. Water is basically your emotions, how you feel about something. So, I mean, water a lot of times is involved in a dream, good or bad, trying to think of crazy ones I've gotten.
And what do they mean, some of these that you mentioned?
Well, the water is your emotions.
Yeah.
I forget what kitchen was, but anything inside your house is different aspects of yourself. So like maybe the basement, if you're a dream that you're in a basement, it could resemble your past. Thoughts that you're not thinking about that's buried in the basement. I have the opinion that symbols are not just like, this symbol means only this. I feel like that's way too limited because we all have different, like the color yellow. You might like yellow, I might not. So yellow is two different things to us, and it could resemble a sunflower or the sun or a blanket, who knows? But, so, I mean, you've got to look at, say you're dreaming about you're in a house. What is your emotion in the house? What also is happening in the house? Because that builds upon what the symbol is. Like I almost don't like dream symbols in the sense of like a dream dictionary because it's too limiting. And if somebody were to just look up a house and it's like said something that doesn't resonate with them, they're not looking at, but it was a greenhouse or was a house with the number 13. Or was a house with a bunch of, cats in it. Like it would have deeper meaning. So, and I don't have most symbols memorized. That's why I look them up. Okay. But I don't if I look up symbols and it's not fitting, I'll go to another site. And sometimes I'll just sit with them and say, well, what does that symbol mean to me? If it's my own dream, I can do that. I can say, what does the house really mean to me? Because it might mean safety. It might mean family. It could be anything. It could be construction, So, and I also use tarot cards and oracle cards sometimes when I'm doing a dream interpretation to kind of check and see. And the cards are really interesting to me because I'll just pull them at random and they will line up with the dream interpretation. So to me, that's a little paranormal because I don't really know where that's coming from. I mean, how come when I pull the cards, they always line up with the dream, So, yeah. And so that to me, that would be, again, the universe speaking to me through the cards. Because like I said, I tend to shuffle them and let a card fly out. That's how I pull, because I want to be really natural, and they always work. So I don't know.
Yeah, these tarot cards are really interesting because my previous girlfriend, at some point, she really got into them. She would do some readings and things like that. And to be honest, I can't remember a time when they weren't accurate.
Yeah.
Even the vase last time, like on time as we broke up, she did a pretty big reading for me for like, I don't know, 9-10 cards, something like that. And I ended up taking a picture of it. At that point, I couldn't properly remember what she was saying about it. And a few months later, I was like, I still have this picture here. And so I just look it up, what the position means and what the card itself means. And I was like, Jesus, that was so accurate. And bear in mind, if in those few months, a lot has happened, last year.
Yeah.
So I was looking at it, man, it's so accurate. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, it really is. I only picked up tarot cards probably 2 years at the most. And I was really, I have a Christian background, so I was a little hesitant of them, but then at the same point, I also didn't believe that that was possible. And now I've completely changed my mind. Not only do I not think that it's something bad, but I think it's something that's actually really magical that I can't explain. So, I mean, it really does work. So I think that if you're somebody who wants to interpret your own dreams, getting a nice deck, you can get oracle cards, get tarot cards. They even have like cards that are just psychology based. And so it doesn't have anything to do with tarot. And you pick it based on, like, if you dream about a building, you pull the card and it tells you what possible meanings. And I love that too. Mm-hmm. They tell you possible meanings. Doesn't mean it's definitely that. It means does this resonate with you?
Right. Interesting stuff. So what were some of the really interesting dreams you had yourself?
Well, I had one dream when I was in my 20s, and I was being chased by a matador, which is like the horse's body and the man's body, and then like the horns, right? It's a matador. I think it's called a matador.
Centaur?
I was like, or maybe that's it. Okay. Whatever it wasn't good. Yeah. And so,
like half man, half horse, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a centaur.
Okay, centaur. So in my dream, I'm like looking at, like, I'm in a clearing, but I can see like the forest in front of me, and I hear it like making this horrible noise, and I can hear it getting closer. So I start to run from it. And because I could see it coming, and I turned to run. And as I'm running, I woke up running through my house. Literally, I was running. I ran out of my dream and was running through my house. And that's never happened to me before or after. And that, I've had other scary dreams. Why would that one make me jump out of bed? I'm not a sleepwalker. I've never had anybody tell me that they've seen me sleepwalking. I'm actually a pretty light sleeper. I tend to like get up, and I am aware that I'm awake, and I'm looking out windows and do whatever. So I thought, for me, that was really interesting that happened, because when you're running through your house out of a dream, it's really scary. That was really scary. I can't explain how that happened. I'm sure a psychologist probably could, but it's only happened the one time. So that's what makes it even more interesting to me. And then another time I had a dream that I was being attacked by an entity, and it reminded me of a male, but it was just like all muscle. And it flew out of the sky down at me and landed on top of me and was sucking the air out of me. And it was I was trying to say a prayer about the Holy Spirit. And instead I got that. And I was trying to say, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus. And it kept making me say, I rebuke you in the name of Satan, which was really terrifying because, and I felt like I was awake. But I did a dream analysis about it later. And it was just about owning your power. And so in the end, I spelled out the letters JES, which if somebody's Christian, they know you're supposed to be able to get rid of an evil spirit by just saying the name, right? And so, but it really wasn't about religion. the dream was using those as symbols to me because I had been to church. So it knew I would understand those symbols, or at least I thought I did. But it turned out it was a dream showing me that I had power. I had power for my own life. So I didn't have to be afraid. But I didn't see that. It took me 30 years to figure that out.
Only. Interesting, because I remember a friend of mine actually mentioned something like that as well, where he was being choked by something in a dream.
Yeah. And did he? So then that was letting him know that something was having power over him, and then how he solved it in the dream is whatever the full interpretation is.
Wow.
I know there are people who say that they're being held down by spirits, and I can't say whether or not they are or not, but I believe in my case, it was a dream and with an interpretation.
Mm-hmm. And you told me about the first dream when you woke up running. I just thought I mentioned it over here as well, because that's also interesting coincidence there. I told you that I was listening to Travis Walton when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast. For those who don't know, he was abducted supposedly by aliens back in the 70s. If you watch the movie Fire in the Sky, that's about him. There was a famous case where where there were 6 witnesses to him disappearing and getting zapped by a lightning bolt coming from a UFO. Anyway, he was missing for 5 days. He turned back up. Could remember only like a tiny bit of what happened. And they went through lie detectors and all that stuff. So very interesting case. But when he was on Joe Rogan's podcast, he mentioned that one night he just all of a sudden he woke up in the middle of running down the hallway in his house. So we just kind of imagine something like what happened to you. And he was aiming for his kids' bedroom. So he got there, and I think it was 2 of his sons, not quite sure. They had a bunk bed, and the one on top bed, he must have rolled over or something whilst he was asleep, and somehow he got stuck in a way that he was basically getting choked out, and he couldn't scream or anything. He was just completely silent there, and he couldn't get out of it, so no one knew what was happening. But somehow Travis knew that was happening. He just ran there. Yeah.
So did he say that after being abducted that he felt like that opened up his awareness more?
Well, the experience definitely expanded his worldview, and definitely got him more into a bit into spirituality also to some extent. Yeah. And for all my listeners, you can just go to Joe Rogan's Spotify and find the episode there, Travis Walton. And he's a really interesting guy, and you can tell that he's not making this up. I mean, it's been decades. He didn't make that much money of it or anything, even though he sold a book and made a movie. But sorry, and he's still saying the same story, just like all his friends. Yeah. So,
yeah, I saw a documentary on that, and I mean, there's with all the witnesses and everything that went on, and I mean, he's not the only person that kind of thing has happened to. It's happened to other people. They had I forget what it's a famous case, but there was like different people had seen the spacecraft or light or whatever it was in different areas. These were all people who didn't even know each other. I find that fascinating. The only thing I've ever had that I didn't attribute it to being something extraterrestrial is a couple of years ago, I woke up, it was only 1 week, and it was a couple of nights out of that week. I woke up to a really bright light in my eyes, like someone stuck a flashlight right in my eye. Mm-hmm. And when I would open my eyes, the room would be completely dark. And it wasn't like a cell phone lighting up or a screen or anything like that. It was darkness. There's not like a street light. There's like nothing, right? Or blackout curtains. And I was thinking maybe it was something angelic or something wrong with my eyes. I actually went to the eye doctor after that, and I told him about it, and he checked my eyes. He couldn't find anything wrong with my eyes. And when I was telling him the story, he just had this weirdest look on his face. Like he wanted to say something paranormal, but because I wasn't bringing up paranormal, he didn't either, you know? But I heard another podcast, and they were saying that a lot of people who are visited by extraterrestrials or abducted, the first thing they see is a really bright light. And I was like, wow, because I find that frightening personally, you know, extraterrestrials opposed to like angels or, you know, some kind of universal knowledge. That's just a little bit scarier because this is a physical being that somehow can get into your room or just abduct you. I've seen stories where people have been hypnotized and they relive their abduction, and it just sounds terrifying, and they're always in pain and they like erase your memory. But I would think that that would still stay in your subconscious somewhere. I would love to know, people who've been abducted, what is their dream life like, you know, because I would think the images would come back to them in little pockets. And maybe some of us who have dreams, we've been abducted by aliens and we have no idea, and it comes out in our dreams, you know.
Yeah, well, it's a little bit more complicated than what you just mentioned. Yeah, for a lot of people, that is the case. It's super terrifying. It's very physical. They end up with missing time, which might this missing time phenomenon, where, well, let's say someone is on the highway, suddenly they are miles further along, and they can't remember what happened for the last 2 hours. That's what I mean by missing time. That might be like a precaution, because it doesn't seem like these beings are trying to do much harm to us. So for those people who can't handle these experiences, for whom it's very traumatic, they can't remember it at the end.
Right.
So they erase their memories. But there's also lots of cases, you know, like for example, back in the 80s, 90s, you had Bud Hopkins, who was one of the first people who proper studied these cases at the same time, and he got John Mack to also look into it, Harvard psychiatrist. And it was interesting because Bud Hopkins, he had this idea that these are physical beings coming here to do things to us that are just no good, right? Scary experiences. But John Mack, he had, on the other side, he had more people coming to him who were talking about experiences that were actually quite good, to be honest. It seems like the more you struggle with it and the more you are scared of the experience, the worse it gets for you. It's almost kind of like a psychedelic experience. Also, when you are resisting it, that's when it becomes really bad.
Yeah.
So those people who go along with it and try to calm themselves down, they actually end up having more pleasant experiences. They end up having even conversations with those beings and end up many times remembering them consciously.
Huh. That makes sense. I mean, it's the same with anything, right? It's your approach to, you know, how you approach it. How are you going to reason it out? Are they actually harming you, or are they just trying to learn from you? Are they trying to help you? We don't really know what they're doing. Could they be helping people? I don't know.
Might be, because a lot of these people who have better experiences with them, they actually end up being more spiritual. And it almost looks like the effect of this experience is similar to having like a psychedelic experience, where it's ayahuasca, mushrooms. So they end up being more spiritual, even though they previously were atheists or something.
Mm-hmm.
And they become more environmentally aware. Also, just overall better human beings, more compassionate and loving.
Yeah.
So it's even this notion that it's just extraterrestrials, physical beings from another world coming here to do these things. It might be an element of it to it, but it doesn't seem to show, you know, this explanation doesn't explain everything. Because there are cases where, for example, I read about some cases where people felt like they were pulling these beings or whatever, they were pulling out their soul out of their body. Then there were cases where it was more like warping reality. You know, I remember reading. It was a book about cases from the former Czechoslovakia, and they mentioned one case where this person was in bed. Can't remember exactly how it was, but the window, when he looked, it was in a different place in the room. So
Mhm.
many times it makes you also think about the cases where people, for example, they look, they're laid on bed, look up, and suddenly there's a hole in the house,
Yeah.
so they can see the stars, and maybe
Mhm.
some beings come through the wall or something.
Yeah.
So it's either those beings are doing something physically to the wall, so they can pass through, or something like that, or there's something different going on. That it's not physical in a sense, and the
Yeah.
entire experience is not. Well, we are basically talking about like what is reality. We don't know. So
Yeah.
maybe these beings, wherever they are, whether they are extraterrestrial or interdimensional, whatever, perhaps they are bending reality in different ways. So it's a complicated topic, but
Yeah.
it seems to be related to everything else. Whether it's dreams,
Yeah.
and the nature of reality, spiritual experiences,
Right.
all these things.
Well, I mean, think about mutual dreams. When people have a dream, which you shouldn't be able to, right? Unless it's a collective consciousness. I had a recent one. I don't smoke. I did like 20, 30 years ago. But I had a dream that I was smoking a cigarette. And that's literally all I remember, is that I was smoking a cigarette and I was really satisfied by it. And my husband, I was telling him about my dream in the morning, and he's all, "That is so weird." He goes, "I dreamt that you were smoking a cigarette last night." And I was like, what are the odds that we both dreamt that I was the one
Yeah.
smoking, and that, so how could that leak over? My mom and dad have had dreams where they're in the same place at the same time. So, I mean, do you have to be really close? The argument is that you have to be really close with somebody for that to have that happen. But I don't think that that's probably true. Think about all the times you're in a dream and there's a bunch of people there that you don't know and they're strangers. But those people that you're seeing in your dream could be other people dreaming, and they're having the same dream as you, but from their own perspective. Like, I really love the idea that dreams, we are transported someplace. Our consciousness is being transported someplace else while we're asleep. I mean, have you ever looked at somebody when they're asleep? They're gone, right? They're not there. You can talk to them, and if they're out dreaming, they're just gone. And you are having experience with other people who are having the same dream with you. You just, because you don't know each other, you're not able to share that. I would love to see a database where everybody puts in their dreams and a computer is able to sort out the images that people got from the dream and connect the people to see, like maybe there's a deeper meaning to that. And these are people that we know in our dream life that we need to connect with, but we don't know. And then what about different time periods? I've had dreams where I'm in different time periods. And what does that mean? And to talk about in the paranormal, they have shadow figures and they're called watchers. And I have a theory that they are people who are dreaming, and other people who are awake are seeing them. Because have you ever had an observation dream where you're just there observing strangers? You don't know who they are. Yeah. So, and maybe they don't even see you, but occasionally they might. Because I had a dream I was on, I want to say it was around the 1940s. It was an old ship. It was like an engine room or something like that. And there was a couple down there, and the ship was sinking, or there was some sort of a problem. And I felt like they started to look at me, like they saw me, and then I woke up. So I don't know. Why was I dreaming about the 1940s?
Yeah.
So
Hard to tell. But I also had one dream that was quite interesting. I don't think I mentioned it to you, but I did mention it in a different podcast. So it started off with me going through like a tunnel. It kind of looked like, if you've seen Event Horizon, the beginning of the movie, it was like kind of crappy late 90s CGI. It showed like a, like going through like a wormhole, black hole or something like that.
okay.
So it was a tunnel, kind of black, hazy, and bluish as well. So I went through it, and then at the end, I ended up being, I think the tunnel was somewhere around Neptune or something. Maybe that's why also the blue color. Anyway, once I got out of it, I was in a house. It was a fairly big house, more like an American style house. It was very old, quite desolate. And I was in there. It was like, I looked around. There was lots of pieces of wood and debris and dust around. So, yeah, at first I was a little bit scared, but then I was like, it's fine, you know. So I took a few steps. I was looking around, and somehow I knew that this was the subconscious of my girlfriend at the time, her sister. She was like half my age, in her teens, and I knew that this was her subconscious, right? I was just very desolate, and suddenly my girlfriend's sister, she just ran out of one of the rooms, and we hugged each other. Then I think I saw the house from the outside as well, from like the backyard or front yard, I don't know. And I think I woke up after that. Then turns out, I messaged in our group chat. I said what happened in the dream, and my girlfriend's sister, she told us that her biggest fear was the fear of abandonment, and she never told us this before.
Yeah.
So I was like, did I really somehow end up in her subconscious?
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were able to connect with her on some level and give her reassurance and then confirm it. So did she say she had any kind of a dream also? Or you were just connecting with, so you were able to connect with something that she maybe didn't even, put out there. I love that.
Yeah.
That's powerful. And that opened up a conversation too.
Yeah. I'm not sure. We'll have to have a look at the message. I've got a screenshot somewhere. She might have had a dream at the same time, but I'm not sure really.
And she might not remember. Right. She might have and just didn't remember.
Yeah. Who knows?
Because that's the thing about waking up. Depending on how you wake up, if you wake up, like say to an alarm, a lot of times that will make it so you don't remember your dream because the sound of the alarm and throwing you out of sleep will mess you up. It's more like when you come out of sleep more gracefully and go through the different stages of waking up, and your mind will, as you're waking up, will start already thinking about the dream you just had, even though your eyes might not even be open yet, but you're already reviewing that dream. And as soon as you wake up, if it's a really important dream, you'll remember it throughout the day, whether you write it down or not. But I always feel like it's a good practice just to write down anything you remember every day, because you can build on the story, through the week and see, where your mindset is at, or are there any messages that you're not receiving, in your waking life that is being brought to you, during your sleep. Because I do believe that you can get messages from the, I call it universe.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that was mentioned in the book about Tibetan yoga of sleep and dream as well. They know about different types of dreams. So you got the basic ones, which we are basically talking about more or less, or mostly until now, where you just dream certain things, and then you got a different type of dreams. I read this, I think it was in Czech language in this book, so I'm not sure if I translate correctly, but I think the other type of dreams were bright dreams, where you can either receive information about the future or some kind of a download of some kind of teaching from some kind of a being, those kinds of things. So you got these kind of dreams, and then you got dreams of pure light, when you are basically one with the universal consciousness or the source, whatever you may call it.
Yeah.
And each one of these dreams, there's probably more, even depends how you categorize them. Yeah. But each one of these can be also lucid or non-lucid. Mm-hmm. So for those who don't know, a lucid dream is where you are actually within the dream aware of the fact that you are dreaming. Those are super interesting.
Yeah. And I've been reading up on how you can train yourself to be aware. And one of the big things is that one is setting an intention, but also they say throughout the day, do something like look at your hand, study your hand, how it looks.
A reality check.
or look at a clock, and when you look at a clock and you tell the time, you say to yourself, am I awake or am I asleep? And I myself, like I told you, the only time I recall having dreams where they're lucid is as soon as I realize that I'm in a dream, I wake up. So that's something I'm actually working on, is trying to be conscious of looking at the clock and saying, am I asleep or I'm awake? Because I keep hoping, because I think if I could have a lucid dream, that would be mind blowing, and I'm surprised by how many people say that they do, because it's not as common as people are saying. So it's interesting to me.
Yeah, that was very interesting. That was one of the very first things that got me thinking about the nature of reality. Because, like I've told you, I think when we were first talking, when you wake up, it's very hazy, the memory of a dream. It's like a fading memory.
Yeah.
But when you are within the dream and you realize what's going on, you look around, it's indistinguishable, like literally, from this kind of reality.
Wow.
So they got me really thinking about what reality actually is and how it's being constructed, and it turns out it's quite different from what we usually think.
Yeah.
And there are different methods how to you got these reality checks. Like look at how many fingers you have, for example. If you've got 6 fingers, you're obviously dreaming.
Yeah.
Or if you wear a watch, you look at a time, you look at it twice. If it's different time every time you look at it, again you're in a dream.
Yeah.
Then setting the intention that, okay, just before bed, you gotta tell yourself, I'm gonna have a lucid dream tonight.
Yeah.
That helps. Then you can even set a timer in the middle of the night at some point, or even multiple times, and you wake up, to get out. Because these lucid dreams, or even remembering a dream, is much easier done when you are in a light state of sleep. So we usually remember the dream just before we wake up, or some of the lucid dreams that I had, which came just spontaneously to me after reading this book about Tibetan yoga or sleep and dream. They mostly happened when I was napping in the afternoon.
Okay.
It's fairly light sleep, like for an hour or so.
Yeah.
And then just before we wake up, have this dream, and it's like, I'm dreaming. And make also trying to stabilize it. It's just about calming yourself down. Like because when you wake up in a dream and you realize that you're dreaming, it's like, oh man, I did it. You get excited, but the excitement is gonna wake you up.
Right.
It happened to me. I think this dream ended up in the book where I was somewhere outside of town, or like outside of a village, stuff like that. It was grass. There was on this side there was a wall and a gate, big steel gate, and on the other side there was some kind of a building there, something also really old. Otherwise it was also grass. There was like a concrete road going in front of me. On the other side there was some fields, and it was very like it was almost like the movie The Crow, starring Brandon Lee. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the flashbacks he had when he was with his fiancée, they were like a bright technicolor. There was very similar colors. The sky was almost like orange, and the green was like very bright.
Yeah.
So I was there. I was like, hold on, I'm dreaming. I was like, calm yourself down, okay? So I looked around. I had a look at the gate. I think I tried to like punch through it or something. That's when it changed, the stream, and I was suddenly in a room which was like everything was white and black. I think it was mostly white stuff, the walls and everything, and some pieces of furniture were black. I think they also end up in the book, and that's why I think I woke up, or just can't remember anything else.
Wow. Well, I know the stone wall is like kind of like foundation. It could be the foundation of your beliefs. The fact that you popped over into a house, and I mean, even colors, numbers, everything means something. So the fact that you were seeing orange and green, and then it went to black and white when you went in the house, which is you. So you're the house. So when you're outside of yourself. You're trying to break through the gate, right? And then you're inside the house and it's all black and white. So it's almost like that's, black and white can mean a lot of things, but it could just be like, it's one or the other. It's yes or no. There's no like in between. And it sounded like the outside was more of a desire, like how your personality obviously is to like explore things. The sky's not the right color for our reality and everything. I almost feel like that's a dream about the fact that you want to explore things, but then something tells you that things are just one way or another, which doesn't even sound like your personality, but somewhere maybe deep it is something that comes from, could be something from your background, could be something that was going on at that time in your life. And you felt like a situation was either one way or another. It couldn't be, like the magical scene you had been looking at, when you broke through to look at a situation, it's this or that, That's all I can think, just off the cuff.
Yeah. Interesting. I can't remember when exactly it was and what was going on in my life when I had this dream. But when you talk about like foundation or something in the wall, I had another lucid dream. It kind of reminds me of this scene from Kickboxer when Jean-Claude Van Damme looks and there's the main villain, Tong Po, and he's kicking with his shin against like a concrete pillar. Right? So this was similar because it was like similar room. There was I think like a square pillar of concrete. I had this lucid dream and I was like, maybe I'll try to kick through it. Right? Because one thing about lucid dreams is that you can do anything you want in them. If you want to change the entire scenery, just a snap of a finger, you can.
Yeah.
But it just takes a bit of training and stabilizing it.
Yeah.
So I was like, because I also used to do martial arts, so maybe that's also why I had this kind of a dream. So there was this stone pillar, concrete, I was like, I'm going to try to kick through it. So I tried kick into it with my shin. And first it was like really slow motion. Many times in dreams you're trying to run, but it's just slow motion.
Right. Yeah.
So this was again the case. I was like, try again. And I managed to kick through it, like straight through the concrete. I can't remember much else from this dream. But...
Well, that's just breaking down some sort of a barrier, right? And it would depend on what else was going on in the room. And then one thing that I question about lucid dreaming is if dreams are a message either from like the universe or something from within, if we're then able to control it, isn't that too much like being awake, our consciousness, and then maybe you miss a message either from yourself or the universe because now you're not listening. Now you've taken the reins and you're going to tell your subconscious how the dream's going to go, right? So I see that more as an entertainment factor, except for when it comes to like healing dreams. They say when people can dream and they can heal themselves, some people can heal others through dreams. And I feel like that's where a lucid dream would make sense. You're in the dream setting the intention. I have a broken arm. I'm going to heal it. I have a cold. I'm going to make myself feel better. Whatever it is that you're trying to heal in a lucid dream, it seems like you would need to be aware and picture yourself healing yourself. Where otherwise I feel like if you're constantly taking over, that's almost like a control thing, right? So here you are, your subconscious is trying to give you some information that you need that you're clearly not listening to. And instead you're like, nope, I don't like that. We're going to do it my way. And you could be missing out on things. So, or maybe I'm just saying that because I'm jealous because I can't do it. But I just feel like that if you're only lucid dreaming, that would be really bad because you'd be missing out on messages. And maybe your subconscious would be like, forget it. I'm not even going to bother anymore. You just go ahead and do what you want, And what if it's actually something from the universe? What if this greater being or universe is trying to teach us things and we're too busy taking over, having our lucid dream and being like, nope, I don't care what you think or know. I'm going to do what I want. I'm going to make this more a certain way. So I kind of like go to the other side of lucid dreaming and think, is that something that we should practice regularly, or set intentions to do? I don't know. I think that maybe, like I said, if it's for healing purposes, or maybe you want to interact more and you want to like sit down, like I maybe would set an intention that I want to sit down and talk to my subconscious, because I've had dreams where I've been talking to somebody, and they're giving me information in words. It's very rare, but to me that's my favorite because it's very straightforward. I don't know. I mean, what do you think of that?
Well, you said it. That you can use lucid dreams for different purposes. But here's the thing: if someone manages to have only lucid dreams all the time, that must be like spiritually really high up there, like some kind of a Rinpoche somewhere in Tibet. So for him, it's surely not going to be a control issue there, right? For us, the normal people here, it's like if you have it once in a while, you're lucky.
Yeah.
But again, back to the Tibetan traditions. Yes, you can change the dreams to whatever you want. You can do whatever you want there, fly and whatever. But like I said before, they use the dreams for a specific reason, which is spirituality and becoming more aware beings. So you can transcend life and death afterwards. And so basically, if you can do whatever you want in a dream, you can also practice spiritually within the dream. You can communicate with other entities, which seems like there is a possibility within an altered state of consciousness, like dreaming, for example. So again, it depends how you use it.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That would be I would want to set that intention, and maybe I'll try that just to sit down and have a conversation with a higher. I've actually drank, they have some third eye tea, which is like a tea you can drink to help you have lucid dreams. And although I'm not sure I would call it a lucid dream, but I had a dream where all of a sudden I was just going up and I was inside what I would call an orb. Like you see a picture of like what they call orbs, and it's just like a fuzz, like it has a little fuzzy. Mm-hmm. Well, I was inside that. And I was up and it was all blackness. And in my mind, I thought I was like going into space. But now I feel like I was just going into like nothingness. It was just there was nothing. And then I wasn't afraid. I was aware. I had no like fear or feelings or anything like that. It was more of I don't know what's happening here. And so I don't know if I can say I was fully aware. But then all of a sudden I started seeing all these lines and symbols popping up. And then all of a sudden I was learning everything I could ever want to know about the universe. And then it just became almost overwhelming. And I woke up. And so I drew out a symbol, the only symbol I could remember, which was a triangle and two dots and then a couple of lines next to it. And when I looked, I talked to so many people to try to figure out what the symbols meant. And it ended up meaning 412. And so I looked up the meaning of 412, and it was all about a spiritual journey, which I thought was really interesting. But that is the closest to being aware but I don't know if I would say I was aware I was having a dream, but I was aware that I was not in my body, let's say.
Yeah.
And that was from drinking that tea.
Well, what's it made of, that tea?
God, I don't know. I don't have it with me, but I can send it to you later. It's called Third Eye Tonic Tea, and it has like ashwagandha, I think it's called, and different things like that. Yeah. So it was. I wouldn't drink it during the day, I don't think.
Yeah, it seems pretty powerful. Well, I remember there's this African dream root they use in don't know which tribe. Somewhere in Africa they use it also for lucid dreaming. Mm-hmm. I tried it like at least twice, but it didn't work properly.
Oh.
because there's a weird way how to do it. You make like, because it's got these saponins, which might be the thing that makes it work for lucid dreams.
Yeah.
And you had to like first make small pieces out of it, which is really hard wood or grate it or something like that. Then you need to leave it in cold water. Then you mix it to make the foam, and it's supposed to eat the foam or something. I don't know, it's complicated.
Oh.
So it didn't work
Wow.
properly, but that's an interesting thing to look into.
Yes,
And
I will definitely send you that tea because I think that'll be
yeah,
something that you'll really enjoy. And it tastes good. It's pre-made. So all you got to do is boil
that's
some
good.
water.
Yeah, do so. I'll have a look at it. And yeah, this tribe uses this because it's like part of their tradition and their spirituality to have these dreams.
Yeah.
But apparently, it only works on people who are supposed to have these dreams. Some people can have them and it just doesn't do anything.
Okay. That makes sense though. I mean, especially if it's a spiritual connection, some people might not be ready to receive the information, And it's not even based on age or anything. It's just our age spiritually is different than our physical age. And some people just, you need to be at the right time to receive such information.
Yeah, that's true.
But I think everybody has a connection to universe and everybody is capable. It's just being in the right place mentally for that kind of experience.
Yeah, that's true. Have you ever had dreams where you were able to predict the future?
I had a dream once of somebody that we met. I had a dream a couple of months before that there was a man standing in our kitchen opening the refrigerator. And I don't remember what else was going on in the dream, but I remembered what he looked like. And a couple of months later, that person moved into our apartment building, which I didn't even connect until one day he was in our apartment and he opened the refrigerator. And I was like, oh my God, that's him. And I don't know what the message was to that. It wasn't like a life-changing person or anything. So I don't know what that was about, but that's the only one that I can recall. And I'm sure there was a bigger meaning to it. I just didn't know.
Oh, maybe it wasn't.
Maybe
Sometimes
not.
it can be just a snippet of a small moment.
Yeah.
Random moment. I had quite a few of these actually, and I think it seems to be a bit more often these days.
Really?
I remember especially one. This was like 4 years ago, I would say. So there was this girl I liked. It didn't work out between us, so we weren't in touch at this point. So in a dream, I was in a building of my elementary school, the later years. So it was like a fairly large hall. On the left side, you had all the classes, the rooms, for the classes. On the other side, there was just like the backyard or something. So I was there with a group of people. There was another group of people a bit ahead of us, and this girl was there. They work out between us, and she gave me a weird look, like she. I think I said hello, but she didn't say anything. She looked at me like she didn't really want to see me. And I woke up from that dream. I was like, oh man, that kind of sucked. And I know it might have been a few days later. I'm not 100% sure. Could have been maybe a bit longer. I don't know. This was back in the UK when I was living there. I went to the shopping mall in the town centre, French Gate. And I was just going out of one shop from Sainsbury's. Again, you had basically a big hallway in front of you, and lots of people there, and this girl was just walking right straight towards me. So we passed each other, and her expression was exactly the same as in the dream.
Wow.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. And I had quite a few of these. Actually, when I dreamt something and shortly after it happened, not always something major, but yeah, it happened.
That's interesting. So do you feel like, like they talk about time is all at this happening at the same time. So do you feel like that you were just kind of crossing in your dream, you were crossing through that time because it's all the same? And for what, I mean, do you feel like, why do you think that you dreamt about her in the first place? Had you never met her, or she was an ex that you were passing, like she was the ex the whole time?
Well,
Right?
we never properly got together because it was
Okay.
messy and complicated.
Yeah.
But we did meet each other quite a lot in person.
Okay, before the dream and before. Okay.
At the point that I had the dream, it was already like, maybe at least a few months it was over between us. So
yeah.
we weren't in touch at the point.
That's interesting. Maybe I also believe in manifesting. So like maybe you were thinking of her without even realizing you were, and it came out in the dream or whatever. And then somehow that manifested into reality. Like, could it be that we're seeing the future, or do we manifest these things from our dream life?
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. It's hard to tell. I remember just recently I listened to a podcast. It's one of my best finds recently. New Thinking Aloud with Jeffrey Mishlow. Really great stuff from back in the 90s, and also recent stuff. And can't remember if it was a very recent one or just a few years old episode. Anyway, guy was talking about the dreams, and he asked really interesting questions, like about the percentage of dreams which are about the past or about the future. So he was like, I really don't know what percentage of the dreams that we have are actually predictions of the future. And then he took it a step further, and he asked, what if all of the dreams that we have are actually predictions of the future? And we don't know.
Yeah.
And
or recreating the story. Yeah.
It really does seem like that everything exists all at once. Every possibility.
Yeah.
You got things like remote viewing, for example, which has been used by CIA, KGB. There's plenty of studies about this stuff which are really conclusive, actually, and some really good cases there. Like for example, when Ingo Swann, when he surveyed Jupiter and saw the rings of it before they were actually found. It was like early 60s or so.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting stuff. And it also shows that human consciousness, or doesn't necessarily have to be human consciousness, just consciousness in general probably, can access anything within space-time. Doesn't matter whether it's past, present, future, or whether it's 5 meters away from you, or whether it's 10 light years from you.
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean,
yeah.
What about the ancestral memories, where they say that it's embedded in our DNA, memories from our ancestors? And I've had dreams. I recently had one that I did an analysis for, and I came to the conclusion that it was somebody in my ancestry who had an experience, and it's imprinted on my dream. But I also believe that and like I said before, there's other people in a dream that you're seeing, and these could be other dreamers, but maybe they're not even from this time period that we feel that we're in. They could be from anywhere, anytime. Because why are some people dressed in different types of clothing? Why are the vehicles older or different somehow, and maybe we're connecting easily that way. I love that thought process.
Yeah, can be. And plus, like also like some of the ancestry, it could be something that's within the DNA itself, because we know that 97% of the DNA used to be called junk DNA, because it doesn't it's not meant to code for proteins. It has some kind of different function, which now I think they're slowly trying to figure out. They kind of control certain processes that has to do with making proteins or certain other things, but we still not, we are not exactly sure what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a huge storage of information right there.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I think that's definitely a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think that from what I've read, that they've pretty much proving that is a real thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, I remember in one of Eric von Däniken's books, because my dad used to give those books to me all the time, because most of the time he didn't know what to give me, so he would just go for Eric von Däniken's books, ancient alien theory stuff. But there's also interesting stuff in these books anyway, and I remember he also mentioned these kinds of past memories, or how the genes or something within us can transfer information from the past. There was an experiment with some kind of primitive life form. I think it was some kind of worm. Yeah, a really small worm, where they kind of trained it, with electricity, and basically, not sure what kind of input it got, but it was trained to predict electrical impulse, so it would contract before it would happen.
Yeah.
Then I think they would slice it apart or something, so it grew back, but still had the same memory afterwards. So there was something that managed to transfer it. Even the parts of the worm which shouldn't have had the memory,
right,
was still there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and I mean, I think that a lot of people will call that natural instinct or something, but I think it's deeper than that. It's coming from a pool of memories and experiences. And if you think about people who are afraid of, like being in a car accident or drowning or different fears that they have, and they don't know where these fears are coming from, and so they say, well, it's from a past life, but it could also be, maybe an ancestor watched somebody drowned and now they have a fear of that. I mean, or somebody was eaten by an animal, like it could also be that. I think that.
Yeah. I was just thinking of that a few moments ago. You mentioned earlier, like some of the very common dreams that are about monsters and creatures and stuff like that. Well, that can be from back in the days when we were living in nature, where there were those creatures hiding in the shadows, like wolves or saber-toothed tigers, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's coming out in a different kind of an image, but that's really what it is.
Yeah.
And why do we have such a fascination with all of these creatures? I mean, going way back, right? There's always been a fascination with not only like gods, but like mythical creatures and monsters. But how do we know that, we don't really have a solid understanding of, what human type people or whatever they were at that time were seeing or interacting with, but maybe it's still in that DNA, like that DNA strand, maybe it's always there, no matter how many thousands of years go by.
Yeah, that's true. One thing I was thinking about, even the Egyptians and their hieroglyphs, and their gods, the way they looked like how would they figure out something like that? But then it does happen that when people take psychedelics like DMT or similar, which they did have access to these kind of things, like the Blue Lotus back in ancient Egypt. People who take these drugs, they sometimes do meet creatures that are like this, that have a head of a animal, and or these gestures that people see on DMT. So maybe those are actual beings that exist somewhere in some kind of different reality.
Right. I had back in 2020, when they were first shutting everything down, and everybody was just like, nobody knew what was happening, and it was, most people were full of fear. I, of course, was as well. And I was meditating with selenite, a selenite crystal I have. And I went right into a trance with the selenite, and I was in a selenite hallway. The ceilings, the floors, the walls, everything was selenite. And I was walking through, and to my left, I saw Anubis standing there. And I was like, that's death. Oh my God. And as I walked past him, he never looked at me. I knew that he knew I was there. And I kept walking past him into just like the pure, white of the selenite. And when I became, I was just sitting in my chair, so I wasn't asleep. I was meditating. And when I became aware, I knew I was going to be okay. That was whatever letting me know that I would be okay. And I don't know if I saw Anubis because that I'm very interested in the ancient Egypt, because that seemed like a strange thing for me to see. But that was just meditating with a crystal and connecting, during a heightened time of fear. Because I do think that during great times of stress, joy, fear, you are able to connect more, good or bad. And even though it was fear, it was a good thing. And it brought me peace,
Mm-hmm.
So.
That was an interesting dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, as always, reality is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
As always the case. I'll tell you one dream. Well, it's hard to tell whether it was an actual dream or what it actually was. I'm kind of curious what you're going to think about it. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in a previous episode, but it happened to my dad. He already passed away since 3 years ago. And it was funny, but just before I left Slovakia, there was certain things that just came out, in my family and stuff that was like, what the hell? And this was one of those things, because he never mentioned it to us up until, I don't know, probably just before I left. So he was saying that this was when I was back in elementary school, so I was like 15 or so, more or less, 14, 15. And he was laid in bed. It was, he just went to sleep. And the way he described it, he must have been in a hypnagogic state, so in a state between waking and sleeping. And he found himself in a room which was pretty narrow and long. And he was on one end of it. On the other end of it, he saw there was a desk, and there was someone sat on a chair, just like I am right now, with his back to my dad, right? And suddenly this person, or whoever it was, just turned around and looked at my dad. And my dad was like, those were the most evil eyes he probably ever seen, like pure evil. He even said, because he also was into UFOs and that kind of stuff. It was like, like a typical gray alien. Those big eyes, they're kind of cute to him, but this was like super freaking evil, right? And suddenly this person or being or whatever it was started coming at him like really fast. Okay. And just when that being was like straight in front of him, he woke up, right? And the weird part about this is that, and this is his own words, after this dream, whatever he did in his life, it just never worked out. He ended up, accumulating loads of debt, which I think also caused his demise, his soon, untimely demise. Lots of stress, and if he tried to make something better, it just got worse, and
So, I mean, it could be almost like he knew that was all coming, and that's what that was. I mean, I hate to say something like, was there somebody who had been like threatening him, like curses, things like that? Because sometimes you can get a mindset and kind of create your own demise, you know what I mean? Through things happening. But it almost sounds like it was a warning. It was a warning dream, and it could be from an outside source, or it could be that an inner knowing that things have already started to roll that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I would take that, I would call that like a warning dream.
I never thought about it that way, actually. Because I thought about it over the years. It's like, my first thought was like, was this some kind of evil entity that actually came to him doing that dream? Or but it could have been also a warning.
Yeah,
Who
I
knows?
feel like it was more of a warning because, I mean, I don't know everything, but it seems
Yeah.
like for an evil entity to interact with you, you're somehow opening up to that. So, like a lot of people do paranormal investigations, they're, using, methods of interacting with spirits that they don't know. Some people actually do like witchcraft and conjure, with black magic on purpose. So, I would say if he wasn't out there trying to do that kind of stuff, then it was more of a warning that things were to come, and maybe it was like, hey, look out for this. This is happening. And he didn't know. That's why I think dream interpretation is so important, because could he have like analyzed that and said, I need to be aware that things are coming to me, and be careful about decisions I make, because sometimes when you have you make a poor choice or have something bad happen, it does seem to, it's a big ball and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, and you just keep rolling down the hill. And sometimes there is no way to stop the ball once it's in motion, but that was my first thought, is it was like a warning,
Could be.
not something actually after him or trying to harm him.
Well, if there was some kind of entity involved or something, well, he obviously didn't go out doing Ouija boards or something like that.
Yeah.
Right. He never did. But at the same time, if I would say he could have been a little bit more open to something negative coming to him because of his mindset and, his temper and those things. It's one thing. And the other thing is that if there was a person trying to curse him or something like that, or sending negative energy his way, it could have been his how do you call it, mother-in-law.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was probably the most evil person in our family.
Yeah.
And yeah, she really ruined the relationships between our power family and my mom's side of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a narcissist. In fact, the reason my mom, I'm going into a lot of detail, but whatever. The reason my mom couldn't hear properly was because she got abused by her, like literally tied to the chair and being beaten by her.
Oh, so then
yeah.
she's totally capable of either intentionally setting, some sort of negative energy, or not intentionally. Because some people who are that toxic, they're constantly poisoning everything around them, and they're not even aware because they think they're right. And then there's people who are that bad, but they also like use ways to manifest against people. I've seen that, and it's, I mean, that does happen. I believe that curses can happen to an extent,
Mm-hmm.
There's always a way to get away from it, but usually people, they blame it on something else, or aren't aware. So,
well, now that you're saying that, I actually had the opportunity, or let's just say, a very unfortunate one, but it did happen, to meet technically it was my grandma, but I grew up not knowing her. And first time I met her, I was 20, give or take. And we ended up actually living in a house for like a few months. And it's, somehow my mom went there, kind of straightened it up, but it went a horrible way. And there were things happening in the house that were really strange, actually. And you could feel there was something like really bad emanating from that person. Right? For example, if I had a flat tire once a year, that was a lot. But over there, it was like a few times in a week.
yeah.
Things like that were happening. Then my mom had an accident when she tripped on the stairs, and she ended up cutting her knee open because there was like a old aquarium there, and she just fell on it. Yeah. And so that happened. And then I remember my dad, he was an electrician actually. So we had this big chandelier which he put there, and then as we were leaving, he was taking it down. So he took it down, and just not two leaves, like a bunch of wires hanging off the ceiling. He decided to pull a light bulb there. So he was doing that, and I was assisting him with something. I stood up, he was stood on the chair. He was putting it there, and suddenly the light bulb and the socket and everything just fell into his hands. He was like, "What's going on?" And then he showed me the wires, and it literally looked like someone cut through them.
Wow.
And we were literally just there, both looking, and it just like fell down.
Wow. Yeah, that's something going on there. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really interesting.
It makes me think of also these poltergeists, where sometimes it's not necessarily like an evil entity there, but it's more like emanating from a person.
Yeah. I actually do believe that, because my son, he's 23, but he has autism. And there's been a couple of times where we've been like in a heated debate about what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening. We were standing under our smoke detector in the hallway. And the noise a smoke detector makes. There's a certain noise. Everybody knows that noise. And so we were having our heated debate. And all of a sudden that alarm made noises I cannot describe. It was too long, too weird, just really strange. And we both stopped. And he looked at me and he said, "What was that?" And so I kidded and I said, "It's just the ghost." And then there's other times where he's very intense, because people who have autism just feel things differently. Mm-hmm. And there's been times where when he's heading to my office, I will see my light bulbs flicker. So, so he's clearly putting that out. But when my clock flew off the wall, we were just watching TV, my husband and I don't even think my son was home at the time, and everything was calm and relaxed. So I think it's both. I think that people can put out that energy to possibly even make like a light bulb explode. I think that's totally possible. But I also think that there's some other energy that's not from us that can exist, that can create activity. It's both.
Yeah, definitely.
I think my main thing is that I would like people to know that you can analyze your own dreams. And I put a lot of things on my blog as I learn them, because I'm still learning. And so as I learn things, I put them on my blog. I also put them on my podcast. I try to include, I do paranormal too. So it's like a dream interpretation, and it's some paranormal. I do a paranormal poll it's called Haunted Hour on Twitter. And every week I have a new poll, and it's just to kind of see what other people think. And then people will put in their experiences. So if you're interested in reading other people's like paranormal experiences, just like your average person who's there, and sometimes they're anonymous, because Twitter, you could be whoever you want. Right. And it's just a way, to look deeper into what the average person is experiencing and thinking about. Because a lot of times people are on TV and stuff, and they curate this certain type of package. And same thing with science. They have their exact, way that they have things, but a lot of times it's not open to what's really happening with everyone worldwide. And so I try to put out as much stuff from just the average people, rather than, stuff that we all know already or have heard about, something different. Mm-hmm. So, and anyone who wants to discuss a dream, if they're having trouble analyzing their dreams, I don't charge anything. You can just send me an email, and, I'll help you walk through it. But my main thing is, I tell people, view your dream as a memory, like you were really there. Because for all we know, we are there. Right?
Yeah.
And so when you're trying to remember a dream, even if it was something that happened 10 years ago, the more you think about your dream, you'll start to remember little details. Like you were saying in your one dream, you were looking to the left. Well, looking to the left is actually a symbol of spiritual, like looking for spiritual awareness. So, and I never knew that until I had a dream, and I noticed that I was always looking to the left. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And so there's actually a meaning just to something as simple as like looking to the left. And the other thing is, with dream symbols, don't just go with, I had a dream about the elephant. It should be, where was the elephant? What was it? Maybe what color was the elephant? What color was the sky? How did you feel? What did you hear? Like, I've become so aware within my dream that I, like walking on gravel, I literally hear the crunching of the gravel, and it made me look down to be aware of what shoes I was wearing in the dream, which it was a pair of shoes that I actually own, which I thought was interesting. So I think that if somebody's really serious about dream analysis, you've got to train yourself to be fully aware of everything, the sounds, the smells. And I'm actually going to be putting an exercise together in my next podcast about being aware of your senses and taking that to your dream life, because there's like you said, the more you're aware, the more information you're going to receive. So that's, I just don't want people to miss that opportunity. I can't tell you how many people I talk to on a daily basis that don't think that their dreams really have any value. It's more than common, yeah. And it
it's
makes me sad.
unfortunate. Yeah.
These are the same people though that never can figure things out and have problems too, because they're not. It's like literally your answers are there. They're coming to you every night. You're just not. You don't really want to know. Is how I take it. I read a thing that said that people don't remember their dreams is because they don't want to, because they don't care enough to. But then they'll also like go and talk to a psychologist or talk to a friend and so
yeah, definitely a good tool, dreams.
Yeah,
and they can be so fun.
Oh, I agree.
Yeah. So when you first start talking, you said you will make a dream interpretation on the podcast, so I sent you 2 dreams.
I never got them.
You didn't?
No.
Well, I wonder whether it's my laptop that messed up us.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Or someone else is like, I don't know why he sent me these dreams.
I'm sure I replied to one of your emails and copied and pasted
Really?
there. Yeah. I'll have a look whether it's in my sent messages or not.
Oh.
That's weird.
Well, you could try to verbally tell me, but it won't be a dream story. But I mean, you could tell me and I can follow up with you later so that you have that.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you at least a shorter one.
Yeah.
That'll be, I think, easier. And it was quite profound, this one, actually. It was maybe one of the first ones that were like, So anyway, this was like 2012, 2013. And I was going through some, rough times back then, mainly because of my dad and, his debts and his temper that didn't help things. So I was pretty stressed and felt pretty down for like, I don't know how many days. And not sure if I napped or it was during night that I had this dream. It's very short, but I was still on a pier in the middle of a lake. And it was, I think about it was kind of greenish and brown colors, like a lake. It was very beautiful. Not sure it wasn't super sunny, but it wasn't like nasty weather or anything. So I was on the pier, and in front of me was Anne Hathaway, the actress. I liked her movies. I found her very beautiful, and she was there wearing like a white dress. It was quite bright, and we just held hands, and I could feel this immense unconditional love coming from her. It was nothing sexual or romantic. It was just pure unconditional love, which might have been the first time I experienced something like that, apart from maybe the love that I got from my grandma or something. And that's pretty much it. And I forgot to say that after that, when I woke up, I was absolutely fine. My mood was just, it was really good. and it lasted for quite, I don't know how long, but
Wow.
despite being down for days and stressed, after
Hmm.
this dream, I was just fine.
Wow. So it's like a self-healing dream. Usually celebrities, it's what there's something that you hope to achieve. So it's whatever you see in her, whether it's successful, beauty, whatever you think of her, that is like the goal. So that you believed in the dream that whatever she represents to you is what you need to have peace with a situation. So the water
Hmm.
is your emotion. So was the water calm?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe
So,
some light waves like on a lake,
okay.
but nothing major. So
And then the
pretty
fact that
calm.
it was daytime is like enlightenment and awareness. So it was like the messages is whatever she represents to you, that is the goal, and that it was, you could achieve it. And then the fact that you woke up peaceful, somewhere in your subconscious it planted that, letting you know that you were going to be okay. But I don't know what
Hmm.
she means to you. Like I said, is it what does she like when you think of her? If you could only give her one word of what she means, what does she mean to you?
Well, definitely
Does she
beauty,
represent like
and
America, beauty, the movie industry, success? You know what I mean?
I think it was mainly about the beauty and probably love. I would say, especially when I got this unconditional
Yeah,
love
yeah.
in there.
And so that was like maybe love that, it could even be your unconditional love, maybe for your father, right?
Maybe.
Could be. Because usually children, like even if you have an issue with your parent, you pretty much have. I always look at unconditional love as the fact that like I have unconditional love for my son, right? Even though
Yeah.
he can do things that I don't like and stuff, it doesn't matter, And so that's unconditional love in my opinion. But that's just off the top of my head, that's what that feels like to me,
Hmm.
is that it was a reassuring dream. Was it coming from you? Was it coming from somebody else? Was it coming from an ancestor?
Hard to tell. I mean, uh, it was literally just us two in the dream. There was nothing else.
Yeah.
So, but I did
Yeah.
have this dream again of definitely within the last year, once or twice. It wasn't with her this time, but it was. I did get this, you know, unconditional love coming at me, just like very intensely.
Huh. Do you think it could be like a connection to universe during the time where you like studying being closer to universe? You were talking about reading the Tibetan, book, and that study. Like I saw in a prior podcast you said that you were raised like not to have a religion, or it was atheism. So were you starting to open your mind to the idea of something besides nothing out there, and that this is like a reassuring to you that you're on the right path?
Could be. At that point, I was definitely reading all sorts of books. At that point, I think I've already found Krishnamurti. At that point, was still one of my favorite philosophers, and with things like Tao Te Ching and stuff like that. So in 2012, 2014, I was definitely into that. And, last year I've had already lots more knowledge than I had back then. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And the love that you're seeking it's not a human physical thing, it's more of a universal love thing, because
Yeah.
anytime you connect with universe, that's what you feel, is unconditional love.
Hmm.
There's no fear, there's no unhappiness. It's always like, so
Yeah. And it just reminded me also, it's becoming one of my favorite quotes, actually. Uh, I got saved somewhere. It's Jordan Peterson talking. And he, he basically asked the question like, what's real? Well, one way of answering is matter is real. But another way of saying it, I'm not saying exactly how he's saying, but anyway, so you can get the point. But another way of saying what's real, it's what matters, right? Because that's how we act.
Yeah.
Right. And then he goes to say, well, what matters the most? Well, pain matters the most, and in some way it can be the most real thing, because try to just talk it away or something, you can't. And now what's more fundamental than pain? It's love, because when you're in pain, the only thing that you have is love and truth.
Yeah.
Right? So in a way, perhaps the love and truth are the most real things.
Yeah.
So when I was going through all this stuff, maybe this dream was telling me that what I needed is love, beauty, and truth.
Yeah, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And it comes to show how dreams can be very useful.
Yeah.
Right. So, all right, let's all finish off. At the end of my podcast, I always ask my guests a couple of questions.
Okay.
So, if there was one piece of advice you could give to people, what would it be?
To own your own power, to know that you control your own destiny. You control what happens to you in your life. Regardless of what's going on around you, no one should ever be controlling what you're doing. You have to control everything, but that also requires effort and sometimes pain.
Mm-hmm. Great. Now, second question. What does femininity mean to you?
To me, femininity is like tapping into your intuition. You know, people who are really intuitive, that's their feminine side, and it's men and women. You know, goddesses, that's where I see femininity coming from.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And last question. What do you think is the meaning of life?
That's a good question.
I know, right?
I can't say I really know the meaning of life, because I mean, that's all we're trying to find out, right? But I think for me, the meaning of life is to always leave people smiling and with something new to build them up, a tool that they can use to better their life. Because when you do that, when you have a community together where you're building each other up and learning from each other, it's only going to bring something good to everyone involved. You know, helping someone, it also helps you.
Beautiful. And where can people find you?
Let's see. You can find me Twitter, Haunted Hour. It's at Haunted Hour. My blog is Haunted Hour Podcast at Blogspot or .blogspot. And then my email is hauntedhourpodcast@yahoo.com. If you Google Paranormally Blonde, I'm on the Paranormally Blonde show. We're on every Monday night. Yeah, that's about it.
Great. As always, you'll find all the links in the description. So thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, anytime. And you guys, hope you liked it. Give it a like, share, comment. It's always appreciated. I'll see you in the next one.